What's up everybody, Jason from Jason's Exotic Reptiles. Today we're going to talk about two tools that I get asked questions about all the time. That is an ultrasound versus a baby Doppler. We are going to show both of these in use on one of the last snakes I have for the year that still has babies, but before we dive into that, I want to talk about the pros and cons of each and why you may consider one over the other. So if you've looked at some of my old videos, I did make a whole video just on ultrasounds, but I've never really shown this baby Doppler off. I might have spoken about it, I've never shown it in use, but now we're able to get footage of both and a comparison of the two. So the baby Doppler is kind of like a one-trick pony. All it does is tell heartbeats. I can actually use this on my wife. We just had our second child and you could hear the baby heartbeat from this. I can also use this ultrasound on my wife and physically see the baby. So there's two totally different features of this. This one is $30 to $60. This one is $800 to probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. This specific one here is about $1,200. I got it on Amazon. I don't even know if it has a name. It's just a no-name ultrasound and it works okay for my uses. Now, why you may want one versus the other. The ultrasound itself can tell you a lot about the animal. It can show you the follicle growth. You can use it any time of year. You can actually see the spines of babies as they're developing in the pregnant female. So it's a much more versatile tool. However, it's a lot more expensive and you are gonna have to learn how to use it. So these things are not super intuitive. You do need to have some basic knowledge of how to use an ultrasound, and there really isn't a one-size-fits-all on how to tune this. There's a lot of different settings. As you get more expensive ultrasounds, they just become more complicated. Now they will give you a much better, clearer picture of what you're looking at, but for our purposes in snake breeding, you don't need to go buy a $15,000 or $20,000 ultrasound. You can get a lot of good ones for under $5,000. With that said, I rarely use it for its intended purpose anymore. I don't really use it for checking follicles, don't really use it for anything else, but I do use it sometimes to see, I have a female, she's sitting on the heat, am I going to get potentially good babies from her? And really what I can see is, do I have physical babies and little spines developing? They look like cinnamon rolls, we're going to look at those in a minute, or do I hear the heartbeat? And that's actually what this is going to be used for, is can you hear the heartbeat? So they kind of give me the same purpose, but this one is again $30 to $60, and this one here is $1,200-ish or so plus, and it's really the cheapest one on the market that I've been able to find. The other feature with these ultrasounds is that not every ultrasound is going to work on every snake. Now this one works okay for my smaller boas. My bigger snakes, like my Burmese pythons or a large adult boa, it's almost completely useless. It has a linear probe. I think it's a 5 to 8 gigahertz probe or megahertz probe. And that's what's going to penetrate only so far. You really need to know what you're buying if you're going to buy one of these, because it may not work for you. Or you need to know what you're doing, because even if it is the right one, you may not know how to tune it to be able to make it effective. Let's go dive into showing you exactly what I'm looking at in a comparison between the two. The animal we're going to show off is an albino Brazilian rainbow boa. She is a T-positive albino, so tyrosinase positive, and she is almost ready to give birth. She's probably a couple weeks away. I didn't actually write her ovulation date down, but this is about the time where she lays. So we're going to dive in, get some close-up shots, show you actually what I'm going to see on the ultrasound and also hear on the baby Doppler. So this ultrasound's pretty simple and intuitive. You kind of turn it on. I do have to set the megahertz to the right megahertz for the probe, which on this one is 5.5. And sometimes I'll wear this around my neck, sometimes I'll put it in. This probe, it has to have a solid surface contact. So I'll just put this gel on the probe, and this creates a little space that there's no air gaps. You can also do this in a bin of water. Let's dive in. I want to show you exactly what I'm looking at in this here. So if you kind of focus in on the snake, the babies are always going to be in the bottom portion of the animal, and sometimes it takes a little bit to find. The picture is pretty unclear, and you can almost see there's a baby right there. Let me get a little more gel on this. Now, Brazilian rainbow boas, there you go. You can see a kind of a baby right there. But Brazilian rainbow boas, they don't eat when they're pregnant. They get very, very skinny. And you can see that kind of spine structure. Hopefully she doesn't come over here and bite me. But you can see this spine structure right there. That's the actual baby. On some of the, there's another one right there. So she has some good babies in her. It almost looks like a spiky cinnamon roll type of thing. but there's two babies right there. The next thing I want to show you is this fetal Doppler. It basically just shows sound. Now this one, I probably bought it, I believe it was $45, maybe 15 years ago. They still make the exact same thing. It's a super simple tool. It just tells you sound, and the snake does need to be still for this. You still need to use this gel. You can get this gel off Amazon. It's fairly inexpensive, maybe $15 for a big tub like this. And my goal is I want to get this right over the snake's heartbeat. The mother's heartbeat is going to be slower. The baby's heartbeat is going to be about double the rate of the mom. So if you're not sure, try to find the mother's heartbeat, and then you can try to find the baby. But the mother's heartbeat is going to be maybe 90 beats per second or 90 beats per minute. The baby's heartbeat is going to be somewhere around 130 or much faster. It's going to be almost double the rate of the mother. Let's see if we can get a heartbeat on this animal without making this girl too frustrated. Just another note to make sure everybody's on the same page. This does not work on eggs. At least to my knowledge, it doesn't work on eggs. I wouldn't personally recommend putting that gel on the egg itself. It could cause some bacteria to grow, but it does not, or it should not work on eggs. It will work on Burmese pythons or pythons that have eggs inside of them, specifically the ultrasound, but the baby Doppler will not tell you anything. In order to hear a heartbeat of the animal really needs to be about 8 weeks or so old, or about halfway through their gestation growth process. Once you hit that 8 weeks or halfway through, you can usually see the heartbeat or hear the heartbeat. While they're physically inside the Burmese python, the ultrasound can work to see the eggs, but the eggs haven't developed enough to actually give off a heartbeat. So you can't actually use the baby Doppler for much if you have pythons. I don't use the baby Doppler or the ultrasound in my pythons because it's a shorter period. After they have their ovulation, they have their post-ovulation shed, and usually within 60 days you're going to see the eggs come out. With boa constrictors, that's right about the time period we're going to be able to start seeing spines and heartbeats if you're using the ultrasound or you're using the baby Doppler. With pythons, once you have the eggs out, you can candle them with the flashlight. That's how you're going to tell if they're good or bad eggs. If you check out some of my old Burmese python videos or my older Burmese python videos with I actually collect the snake eggs, you'll see me candling the eggs in these videos, and we're going to check if they're viable or not. So that's kind of how you deal with it with pythons. With boas, you won't know until they're physically born unless you're utilizing one of these tools. All right, I've been down here for about 5 minutes trying to find a heartbeat, and this is the importance of having tools available to you. Now, my ultrasound tells me she has babies. My baby Doppler says there's no heartbeats. So another critical lesson out of this is just because you have an ovulation, just because she develops babies, that doesn't mean you're going to get a successful litter. So what this tool told me is that there is no heartbeat in there, or I'm just having trouble finding it. Brazilian rainbow boa babies are really small, and maybe I just can't hear the heartbeat on this. The ultrasound, I do see spines, I do see babies in there, but that doesn't mean that they're going to develop fully. They could have stopped developing halfway through. So let me grab this girl. I'm going to close her cage up so she doesn't get loose on us here. So we'll leave this girl alone for a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit more about these tools we have. The purpose of this was actually to show you how useful a baby Doppler is, and unfortunately, maybe it showed you it was useful and maybe it was not, because there are limitations to it. So limitations to the baby Doppler, I actually tried to find the mother's heartbeat, and I could hear something, but it was really challenging. I think being a 3 megahertz probe, it was penetrating too deep. And being the 5.5 megahertz probe with the ultrasound, I was penetrating just enough to see the babies. I did also try on a 7.5 and an 8.5 megahertz, and I could still see the babies, but it wasn't as clear. So I think that 3 might have been penetrating too far through a really small snake, specifically those little tiny babies, little tiny heartbeats. I'm definitely going to have to keep you guys updated on what the outcome of this girl was. But really, again, you have different tools to what you have. With a big boa, I use that ultrasound, or I use that Doppler quite a bit, because I want to know, does this female have babies, and is she producing good babies? So the two tools in combination are really powerful. However, as I mentioned, I don't really use the ultrasound for its intended purpose of trying to find the follicles within the baby anymore. So it's really, you need to determine for yourself, do you want to buy the more expensive tool, the ultrasound? Do you want to buy the less expensive tool, the baby Doppler, or do you want to buy them both? Both of them are valuable. I use both of them specifically after ovulation, and they both have their own intended purposes and uses. So hopefully you guys found this video somewhat helpful. I really appreciate you guys watching. If you're looking for a community chat and you want to start getting into a community of like-minded keepers and breeders, make sure to check out my Patreon. We have a free tier. We have tiers going up to $300 a month for one-on-one calls, multiples per month. If you want to check out some animals, potentially these rainbow boas when they're born, check out my website, jasonsexoticreptiles.com. And until next video, let's keep it moving.